St. Mary's prides itself in having a campus that's, quote, picturesque. It encourages its visitors to pack a camera before going on tour of the campus. According to the St. Mary's website, the campus is a pretty photogenic place. But on the outskirts of this remarkable campus, there lay a part of St. Mary's that doesn't meet missionary Renaissance protocol. On the scale between picturesque and photogenic, where can a campus made of missionary Renaissance walls fit the controversial art known as graffiti? In the 1920s, St. Mary's had to have its own water supply because its location put them away from city developments. According to the St. Mary's archives, a man by the name of John J. Donovan designed a sewage and control system with the help of his engineers and the state health director at the time. The system ran off a natural dam site that stored some 70 million gallons of water. But as time passed, the control system, known as Lake La Salle, became obsolete. It is now the canvas for various graffiti artists.
It's just not a safe place to be in the first place. So how these guys are getting halfway up that wall, we haven't caught them. Yeah. He did see a few guys, and as soon as he called out to them, they said something about it's private property or it's public property. We can, well, no, you can't tag on public or private, but they're wrong. It's private property. St. Mary's owns that.
Corey Anton's philosophical perspective on this, public space is exactly that, public space. It is not private space. Nobody has private space because there is no such thing as true ownership. No one can really lay claim or title to anything.
You're trying to challenge society. You're pushing against it to kind of see what is public space, what is private space, and then also maybe even jumping the fence over that social construct and just saying, well, every space that I'm in is my space. So for me to graffiti on this is no big deal. And that's a very different model than everyone in our society is used to, right? Because we work under this kind of archetype that, okay, I'm gonna be nice, you're gonna be nice. And so this space, we're kind of all borrowing it, we're using it all the same, but we're gonna be very friendly and treat it a very particular way, whereas a graffiti artist may come in and be like, that structure is a very old pre-existing structure that I have no connection to, nor do I want one to.
The walls out there in the public, if you go out and you hike through the mud in the woods and you get to a wall that nobody's using, then it's like, I kind of don't see it as any disrespect to just like take over the wall and start painting on it. And it's like it's someone's property, yeah, but it's like, nobody's using it. You can put your name out in the public, and if somebody else is gonna hike up in the muds and get to the wall and see your name there, then maybe they'll go over your name, but maybe they'll just put their name next to it and be like, hey, I was here too. We're both like traveling along the same journey, trying to do the same thing.
We do not have, in my 10 years here, have not had graffiti lingering on all the walls, because what happens with graffiti, and this is a known fact, that if you leave graffiti, and I'm not talking about art form, I'm talking about tagged form of graffiti on a wall, that encourages everybody else to come by and continue that. If you wash it down, clean it up right away, it shows them that it's not a clean slate for them to come and do it again necessarily, but the longer it's left, the more it promotes other people to come and do it. It's kind of like the broken window syndrome of a warehouse. One broken window doesn't get repaired, somebody comes by, sees it, throws another rock.
I'm a staunch supporter of First Amendment freedom of speech rights. But at what point does one's entitlement to the freedom of speech stop and get cut short when it comes to that freedom of speech now impinging upon my rights and my freedoms. If I have a building that is purchased by me, does someone have a right to come and deface that building so that they can express their freedom of speech? Because now their freedom of speech is marring my building.
For example, in my neighborhood, there's a house that was being rehabbed. Really beautiful home. I mean, awesome. And man, they took the rudest, like gold metallic, like spray paint. Yeah. And they blasted out the side of this house. They just put up their tags. I mean, big old like bubble letters. They did it on the front gate. And basically, no one's been back to work on that house for probably about a month.
I mean, it really varies from person to person. You know, sometimes people be spending like fucking between anywhere from a whole day, like to 2 days or 3 days on some of this shit. In America, we have the freedom of speech, but a lot of times, if one person stands up, their voice, sometimes it's heard, but it's not. There's no guarantee in that. You could just be, nobody could listen. Who knows what could happen? A lot of people are too lazy or just don't have the courage to just stand up and say something or try to do something about what they want to change. It's just so much easier to put that message on a wall and let who knows how many people see it. The more public of a place it is, the better.
Putting stuff on public places like bridges, like commercial buildings that basically are owned by the city, and that's what I always thought was cool about it. It's like, yeah, you are causing, you know, disturbance to the natural order of things by putting things on public spaces.
Who knows, the next morning it could be covered up, or it could be there for 2 days. You'll have 2 days worth of traffic looking at your message. There's a lot more advertising power in that, and it's cheaper to do that.
I love this quote: art is not a mirror, art is a hammer. The world that we see around us oftentimes isn't a pretty world, and you have to get angry, you have to get pissed off, you have to exert some sort of personal influence on the world around you if you don't like what you see around you. That's where art becomes a hammer. You use it to smash the old forms and conventions in order to create a new paradigm.
It really depends on the mood kind of sometimes of what the person's in. I mean, if they're pissed off, they could have a really, you know, angry looking piece.
Your average person doesn't have access to the halls of Congress. They don't have access to television, news media typically, to tell their story. So how do they do it? How does your average person tell their story? Well, in many ways it gets played out through the graffiti art that you see around.
Doing political messages. There's people out there that are, you know, just in it just for tag banging, just because, you know, they in a crew with a bunch of thugs and they doing their shit. There's people out there that are doing it for the art, like me.
When it's done well, it's could be revealing truths. Art could do that, visual art. When it's done poorly, it could be propaganda, right? So I think that it's a great outlet to talk about issues that come up with social injustice.
And a lot of it's like propaganda, a lot of it's political, and a lot of it's just like trying to get that idea in people's heads subliminally, however many times they can. They pass that same banner every day on the way to work. They see that same thing every day. Maybe one day they'll wonder what it is. Maybe one day they'll realize what it is and actually agree with it. That's just one more person.
It's kind of funny to me because I think, like, really? There's like an oasis where people write their kind of thoughts about stuff, but really do graffiti.
If a building, a location, a wall, and some sort of area by definition isn't used by anybody and is just in that sense sort of dead space, then I certainly have no problem with that becoming a canvas upon which people paint their art.
Appreciate your artwork, it looks good. Can't have it though. Please find someplace else, do it on a canvas.
I think it's fine that it's there, and in fact I think it's a very cool thing that we have this sort of ongoing display of this kind of public art.
gives a fuck about some graffiti down here. I mean, that's why it hasn't even been erased. If you want to see this graffiti, you gotta like take a hike, you gotta like jump down a bridge. Who's ever gonna see this stuff? Except you and me, because you dragged me down here.
Wow, how low has like graffiti gone? Or like, man, no one even knows how to engage graffiti here.